Cat TV is celebrating 30 years of community media. Help support Cat TV's next 30 years by becoming a member today. Your membership will help us continue covering meaningful, local content. Thank you for supporting your local community media station.
The board will take action after the executive session. Item 3 is finance and operations related, which includes the treasurer's report. The consent agenda is item 4, minutes, warrants, retirements, resignations, and nominations. The superintendent's report is item 5. Item 6 is the chair's report. 7 makes room for other issues. And there's an informational packet that includes the budget status report and the student enrollment for January 2020. Does the agenda meet the approval of the board?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
If there are no objections, we'll begin with public comments.
I'm not seeing public present. I'm not seeing any members public.
Okay. We'll move on to the executive session for 1 VSA 313, the appointment or evaluation of public officer or employee. Is there a motion to?
So moved.
We have a motion from Fran
Second it.
and a second from Leon.
Yep.
Do we say who we gonna be going into executive
You
session?
have Dina Atwood here and the superintendent. I would ask that the board allow us to enter the executive session.
So given those
Aye.
circumstances and the request, is there any discussion on this motion?
No.
Seeing none, all those in favor of retiring to executive session as stated, signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
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 I'll create a breakout room. I'll leave the general meeting open. Yes, please. Oh, yes, so you open another room, right? And move them into. So. Into.
Just amazed at people who know how to do this stuff. I'm glad that I do it.
You know who this is? Is that Jackie Kelly?
Yep, that's Jackie Kelly, yeah.
Still won't have everyone. Does it look like everyone's back?
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay. It's approximately 5:14 as we return to open session. We need to take action in open session on our activity in executive session. So I'd entertain a motion to accept a letter of resignation from Bill Basic effective June 30th. With the acknowledgement that this was a one-year contract that ends June 30th. And with thanks for the transitional services that Bill has provided during the transition with Arlington into the SVSU, Arlington and Sandgate. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second. Motion from Fran, second from Ray. Is there discussion? You have anything to say about that in discussion, Jim? Or would you like to?
None of it. I'll have your discussion and then I
Okay.
will add something.
Seeing no discussion, all those in favor signify by raising their hand and saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Abstentions? And the motion carries. Give us the comments momentarily.
I noticed that Laura hadn't come back.
I just want to take the opportunity to thank Superintendent Basic for his support with the Arlington Sandgate transition. And his role as Assistant Superintendent has been critical in the transition piece. And I appreciate his willingness to stay on for this year and assist with the transition. And I wish him nothing but the best. And thank you. Thank you, Bill, if you're watching.
And I would, this is Nicole. I would just like to add, I have worked with Bill since he came into the superintendent's role for the Arlington School District in Battenkill Valley. And am incredibly grateful for the hard work that he has done over those years. It is often the superintendent who is the bearer of the unpleasant news and takes one for the team. And Bill has done that consistently for our schools. And he's put us in a very good position financially. We have an incredible staff and community and culture in our schools right now. And I give Bill a lot of thanks for his leadership through all of that.
Thank you, Nicole. Other comments?
As the Arlington School Board Chair, I'll second everything Nicole said. Bill has done a fantastic job for us. He has truly been a leader for us over these last few years, especially this last month helping us with this transition here. He's done a very good job with that. And Bill has really done some great stuff for our district, so he will be missed. But I'd like to publicly thank him on behalf of the school board.
And I echo Nicole and Todd's comments and would like to also thank him, and it's been a pleasure working with him.
Other comments?
No other comments. It's just that when we on the Zoom and the people that are talking, we don't know who they are. That's actually making a comment and so forth along that line. So it'd be great to hear the name being acknowledged before they make a comment. So everybody would know it that's on Zoom.
Thank you, Leon. You know that the members of the Arlington board that are here?
I've only seen Nicole and Bill Basic.
Todd Wilkins
Okay.
and Matt Wachowski. Is that proper pronunciation?
You got it? You're
Well,
good.
welcome.
We all set?
Yeah. On the critical people there.
Okay. Item 3 is finance and operations related. We have a treasurer's report from December 31st, 2021. We would look for a motion
I'll
to
move it.
approve that. We have a motion from Fran,
Second.
second from Todd. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? A motion carries. We are item 4, consent agenda, which includes the minutes, warrants, retirements, resignations, and nominations.
I'll move it.
Have a motion from Fran,
Second it.
second from Leon. Discussion.
I was not in attendance at the meetings to vote on the minutes. I would need to abstain from the minutes.
Like those removed from this category, or you simply would abstain on the motion?
I will also need to abstain because I was, at least on the minutes, because I was not in attendance.
Maybe good to remove them, because I don't believe I was here.
You weren't there either.
So if we could have a motion to remove the minutes from the consent agenda and vote on the balance of the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second. Motion from Fran, second from Ray. Discussion. Seeing none. Those in favor signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
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 And we will remove the minutes and vote on those separately. The balance of the consent agenda includes warrants, retirements, resignations, and nominations. We have a motion on the floor, but I'm not sure if we have a correct motion because it included the minutes.
I'll move it again without the minutes.
All right, Fran makes a
I'll second
motion.
Second it.
And Ray seconds to,
Second it.
all right, we have a second from Ray. Discussion? Seeing none. Those in favor of the consent agenda without the minutes, signify by saying aye, raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? And we may ask for another motion to consider the minutes from December 21.
Still moved.
No, second.
Second.
We have a motion from Fran and a second from Ray for the minutes of December 21, 2021. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? And abstentions. We have Todd Wilkins, Matt Pakowski, and Nicole as abstentions. Any others? I think Richard, yeah, Richard. got that. And the motion carries. Superintendent's report, item 5.
Good evening.
You, excuse me, you had January 5th minutes.
I am sorry. I had it in front of me and I didn't put it down. Can we go back to entertain a motion to?
I'll move those
approve
also.
January 5th. We have a motion from Fran,
Second it.
second from Leon. Is there discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand, saying aye.
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 Opposed? Are there abstentions? Todd
Yeah,
and Nicole and Matt
yeah, I don't think I was there either.
have abstained. The motion carries, the minutes are accepted. So we're back to the superintendent's report.
Good evening, board members, members of the public, if there are any, administrators who are here. Tonight is a part 2. The beginning part of the superintendent was a part 2. Last month, you heard a presentation more on the social emotional health of our students. Some of you board members have heard this at your local board meeting, but we also have Arlington here and we North Bennington here that are part of the issue but do not hear this report. So Assistant Superintendent Laura Boudreau is going to speak to engagement and truancy, and this is part 2. Next month is assessment. That's the third part to this report. So with that, Good evening, Laura.
Good evening, hello, everybody. I'm also here with Dr. Kate Abbott, our interim director of student support services. She's going to help us out. I also noticed that Dawn Campbell's here. I know, one of our associate directors of student support services. She also has been part of some of the inclusion work that we've been doing. So I want to thank you for being here. There she goes. Hi, Dawn. So as a reminder, part of recovery was planning to support students during this period of time of coming back to the school. And so as a reminder, we started last year when the state asked us to take on this process, pulling together a team of key stakeholders to review data and to plan for steps. And we know that recovery is going to take us many years, but we are on the road. And so pillar 2 again is engagement and truancy. So I'm going to share my screen. Oh, let me share my screen, please.
I'll do it again. Oh, did you get like kicked out?
I got like, yes,
All right.
really kicked out. Like the Wi-Fi kicked, everything kicked me out. Thank you.
Yep.
Right. I know I need to make it bigger. Give me just a moment. How's that? Okay. So we're going to start with our acronyms. So again, you'll hear me say ESSER, Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief, MTSS, Multi-Tiered Systems of Support. CIP is our Continuous Improvement Plan, which is a requirement of the state. Universal Design for Learning is the new acronym you'll hear tonight, linked to this pillar. And then Collaborative Improvement Plan, we might touch upon that. So as a reminder, the SBSU recovery process is a multi-year plan. And we have a tab on our website right here that you can always visit. And when you click on that tab, it takes you to buttons on the right-hand side, and one is planning and implementation that lists the 3 pillars. It has the entire district recovery plan, and you're going to notice in blue when you visit this on our website is we're actively updating things that are happening. It could be how we're using ESSER money to support some of the activities we've determined, the team determined last year. So we just want you to have a place so you can see how we're progressing along. There is a feedback button as a reminder that you can always go to that's checked regularly. So if you have community members that want to know more about recovery and ESSER, we encourage you to send them to this site. We want feedback from our community. So just as a reminder, these resources are here. We also want to remind you that this pillar, engagement and truancy, is linked to the 5 Vermont transferable skills. These are skills we want students to walk out our door having as they go off to the next chapter. We want clear and effective communication, creative and practical problem solving, informed and integrative thinking, responsible and involved citizenship, and self-direction. So these are the standards that we use. And now we're going to show you a little bit of data that's SBSU data, because to monitor our action steps, we want to look at data. And so we're going to start with a little snapshot of attendance. And you'll notice we're not doing comparison from year to year, because last year when we were looking at attendance data, we had students that were remote. We had students that were in hybrid models. We had students that we were bringing back into the building. So last year's attendance data looks very different than this year's attendance data. So we wanted to give you a little snapshot, and we want to thank Bill Basic for his assistance as well as he collaborated on this presentation tonight. So we wanted to give you a snapshot of this was in November. What did that month's attendance rate look like, taken from board packets and the school management systems from the different districts. But we also want to remind you this year, we're dealing with different attendance variables. We have kids that are quarantining. We have kids that have COVID. So absenteeism is something that we're constantly monitoring and addressing. And we want to thank the policy committee for being supporting some of the practices that we're putting in place right now. And we know things are going to shift again. So thank you for your flexibility. So this is a little snapshot of some attendance data. The next little snapshot we're going to provide is kind of a small snapshot of our district special education population. It's the percentage of total students. So you can see as a district, we're hovering in each of our different districts at about 21% of our students are have an IEP and are receiving some type of supports. And then what we do is we use that data and we look at the action steps that the recovery plan suggested last year to see how we're doing. So I'm going to start with, what does instruction look like for engagement? Well, we really want to work on getting our students re-engaged with school. So we start with, what are all kids going to receive? And we're lucky to have the Vermont Educational Quality Standards again as a guide. So at the elementary level, you're going to see a lot of morning meeting and a lot of circling practices that are linked to restorative practices. And so we're trying to re-engage students in conversation. That's a big key component here in building relationships. And at the middle school and high school level, again, advisory and seminar and circling practices. And then you can see across the board, we have a local health curriculum with standards that come from our state, that we have a wonderful curriculum teams that established our curriculum based on those standards. So these are the things that we're exposing all students to provide instruction. And we really want to make sure that our teachers, again, just like in Pillar 1, unique professional learning and strategies. So how will teachers learn more about instructional strategies to support engagement and truancy? So again, we've been providing, and I want to remind you that we're highlighting in parentheses how the recovery team really wanted to target grant funding. So you can see, you'll see ESSER again. So we're using ESSER money to provide a lot of these trainings. So we do provide trainings in morning meeting and circling practices. And we have, again, a behavior social emotional coach that can help monitor that. And I'm going to pause right here because a lot of our work has been around universal design for learning and just offering different opportunities. So I'm going to turn this over for a moment to Dr. Kate Abbott.
Hi, if you haven't seen this presentation at the elementary board or the MAU board, universal design is really an instructional, curriculum instructional design tool that is used in the general education classroom to help meet the needs of all learners by making learning accessible. So an example might be if we use a textbook in a science class, if that textbook is available on a digital resource as well as a paper copy, it benefits children who have a broken arm that can't carry their backpacks with their textbook home. It helps kids who might struggle with reading, and it also helps kids who might be forgetful and left their book at school so they can access that book at home. So it's kind of leveling the playing field and helps all learners access learning just in the tools that we use to teach and how we present material and how we allow students to show their learning. So the UDL work that we're doing across the district is K-12. And we've had Rick Reardon in to cover a book that's formative work in this field called Your Students, My Students, Our Students. And we've had elementary, middle, and high school participants in that. Mostly the entire middle, we had a large middle school group go through, and then another group of middle school again this year. And they're furthering their learning at the middle school with the Rick Reardon Book Club Elevating Co-Teaching. We're also working with Dr. Leanne Young, who is an ASCD author and presenter, and she's coming right here to Bennington to work with a leadership team at the high school on the concepts of UDL to help us both boost student achievement in all subjects and also look at our graduation rate. And then we also have a district-wide leadership team with Dr. Katie Novak, who is supported by the Vermont Superintendents Association, with other schools across Vermont. And she is leading us in the Inclusive Education Project. And those are some of the different ways that we're coming at this universal design opportunity.
Thank you. So a few other things we just wanted to touch upon is so one of the questions we pose a lot of when we were working through recovery, we had a lot of questions. So we posed questions. So how can we increase student engagement through responsible and involved citizenship? So the Arlington team has taken on a student-led equity pilot project, which is super exciting. And we're gonna watch that, and we're gonna see if that's something that we can grow in the district. So there are these, one of the beautiful things about recovery work is you can start little pilots and innovative ideas, and then the goal is to grow it. And I should have put there, that's also using ESSER money. So just as an FYI. Another thing we're gonna monitor district-wide is we're just starting to have conversations again around personalization and personalized learning plans. An example would be, we sat in an equity meeting yesterday with some students from Arlington and from Mount Anthony, and it was really interesting listening to them talking about how they've really enjoyed the seeds they've seen in education about being able to have an adult to talk with them and getting them excited about their education. So we're excited to kind of revisit personalized learning plans. And then we have a really big goal, and we haven't started it yet because we want to point that out. Recovery is supposed to take many years, and we can't jump into all the action steps we've started. So we're going to space them out, but something we're really excited about pursuing is how do we increase student choice? And it's something that is linked to the universal design for learning, but we really want to, one of our goals, and we're looking forward to it, is just really engaging our students and how we can provide choice in their learning environment. So to close out, we just again wanted to give you a snapshot of Pillar 2. Pillar 2, which is around engagement and truancy, and I'll pause to see if you guys have any questions for us, and then the next time we meet with you will be Pillar 3, which is academic achievement. So thank you very much for having us.
This may sound like a stupid question, but is there an age group that you can identify that has greater problems in recovery and reconnecting, and I don't know, get rid of paranoia that's around all the things that it has anything like that been identified?
So I think the thing every child, every family journey through the pandemic was different. And I think as educators, that's what we really needed to remember, is that everybody's journey is different. And that's made us really think about what are the pathways in schools we need to offer to make sure that they're connecting. And so some of it means trying to be really reflective and think about what they've been through and how we can support them. But I think a lot of this pillar is around how do we get them excited about learning and wanting. I think if we create excitement about our learning environments, that's going to encourage more students to feel more connected. So it's this pillar to me is a lot of problem solving, and it's really personalized and individualized, and it looks different at every level. So we have a group, and I know our interim director of early ed was here earlier. We have some younger students. Just imagine they didn't experience school for a year and a half. So engagement looks very different for an early ed child. And for a high school child, we had blocks of time where they were totally out of school. And we had I talked with one student, and there were kids that were super nervous about starting high school because usually there are these transitions and all of these things, and those pieces are missing. So I think there's little pieces of it at each level. It just looks different for the age level of the child.
think.
It's a great question.
On your attendance numbers, were in the red below, you
The
have
addendum?
the COVID related,
Yeah.
were those, so were the attendance numbers, do those percentages include students that were out due to COVID, or is that an adjustment?
So the addendum that we established said that those students who are home following the COVID-19 protocols from the Vermont Agency of Education will be excused. Okay, so they are
So
considered
in
excused.
your, like, whatever, I think they
The
were.
data, correct.
The data in the 80%, they were already removed from, were those
So
absences removed from those numbers or not? I'm just curious
Yeah.
how that skews the number.
Correct.
And then
It's a
the
great
second
question.
part to
Yeah.
my question would be, how do those numbers compare with other supervisory unions? And just to kind of get like a level set to kind of see how we're doing compared to other people?
Great. I'm going to take your questions.
Yep.
I appreciate them, and I can find out. I can tell you that some of these come from the attendance data comes right from our board packet, so I can take a deeper dive into how those numbers are pulled. So thank you for that. But yeah, I'll find answers to those
Okay.
questions.
And overall, was the supervisory union pleased with the attendance numbers that you see there? Or do you feel like we have work to do?
I don't think we're ever pleased when we have students out of school. So, I would always say that there's always further work to do.
We have, I feel like the social workers that are attached in all of our
And our family
buildings
engagement.
and our family engagement specialists are really busy.
Yeah.
They're really busy trying to re-engage and be really diagnostic to figure out what it is so we can get kids back in the building.
So do we have a need to focus there and increase staffing in that particular practice?
We've added a lot of staffing this year in that area. And like the target is constantly moving on what the issue is on impacting. Kind of, so for example, I had an email from an elementary principal today pleading for additional busing. And, we just received it today, so we haven't looked at it, because it's students that aren't eligible for a bus by the policy of board, but with the impact of the cold weather, they feel that there's less walkers coming to school. So like that's, and I can't say that would be an easy fix, because even if we had the money for busing, our transportation contractor is struggling with the staffing issues that we are too. But we will look at address it, because like I said, the priority is getting them and keeping them in school.
Laura, this is Nicole. I had a question. We have, and I'm sure we're not alone in this, we have community members who are coming to the board with concerns about social emotional development, particularly for young students who have been in class masked for this length of time.
Mm-hmm.
And our principals and our board members are providing feedback and assurances to the extent possible. Do you have any insight or feedback or direction that you might be able to offer on how we can, it may be that they're hearing the message from the same people over and over again, and it's not the message that they want to hear.
Yeah.
But could you offer any feedback or guidance on how you are within the SVSU, within your member districts, how you are responding or how you're guiding your administrators to respond to those concerns?
What is that?
Yeah, and if not Laura, we have Kate Abbott here, who may.
Yeah, I don't mean, yeah.
Yep. Kate, would you like to address that?
It's interesting because it made me think about, like, your question is really interesting. It made me think about all the social emotional work we did with young children, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, around social emotional connection with people with masks on, including, giving kids pictures of the child with the mask or the teacher with the mask and the teacher without the mask, and expressing different emotions so they could recognize folks with their masks and without their masks, to say that this is kind of a new normal. You might go to the grocery store and see folks wearing masks. It's different. It's all around our community. So the teachers have done a lot of work around trying to help children just understand mask wearing as part of a natural day-to-day event, like we wear, our hats in the winter and our gloves in the cold weather. But I think the ongoing focus is something that is good to keep in mind for littles that are coming up into the school who may have been at home prior to kindergarten, because we did a lot of the focus on the social, emotional, and comfort with masks as we started the pandemic. And I think that we're so used to it now, it's great to reinvigorate that focus again.
Well, and I will say, I have a unique, I guess I feel like I have a unique perspective as a board member. I had an opportunity to substitute in the classes last year. And I think some of the outside concerns of the impact that this is having on kids, watching them in the classrooms, it's not. And so any support that you in your capacity can provide to kind of reinforce that messaging would be really helpful for us as a board.
And one other thing that we just meeting yesterday with the Teachers Association of the SVSU, we have a standing committee that was part of negotiations that focuses on safety, but it also it went to another place yesterday. I think a great level, a discussion about what the start of school should look like next year, and that that focuses more on the social emotional health of our students, get them in a safe place before heavy duty learning starts. So, and that could be possible half days for kindergarten to start, because that's where we've seen such a spike. We had some great data presented to us yesterday that shows what we anecdotally already knew, that the impact on our younger students as they come to school, many of them for the first time. And so it's paused us. And one of the things that like I said, what we're really going to look at, Nicole, is how school starts for all grade levels next year. A very different, potentially a very different start, for lack of a more technical term, a softer start as we bring them back to school next year. Because we all acknowledge what the impact has. So, and I said, we've hired so many of those positions like that you asked about, and I might say that we've tapped out what we're chasing the same positions that so many of the school systems are. So, and there are some additional positions in this year in the proposed budget for next year that our principals have requested to deal with this, but
it's also, I think we're building something we didn't know. We're building things and we're developing, like Kate really described, something that we never knew like a way to connect socially, emotionally with things on our, masks on these things on our faces. And I also think with the positions that we referenced, we didn't know we needed them, and all of a sudden they're new. And so we're building infrastructure right now, and we're asking them to collect data about what they're doing. And we're trying to figure out like how to get the most use and make sure that we're reaching the kids that we need to reach.
I think a real perfect example of that is our family engagement specialist, which maybe if we told you a couple of years ago we needed that, you might say, what's the purpose? And these are people who are there. Some of them are based out of this building, but they are out on the road visiting families, engaging with houses, getting them to come to school. So critical position that I was one that may have doubted the need for, not that long ago, and now it's a critical piece that we've added. We may have to do more. Well, next. Thank you.
Is that it?
Any other questions for Laura? I'll go on to the next item.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. So staffing snapshot. Let me explain what that is. Tonight, I wanted you to have a snapshot of one thing that is impacting our schools COVID continues to impact staffing levels in our schools. We have been through so much since March of 2020. Our students, our support staff, our teachers, our administrators, our schools, our boards. Our principals and school-based staff are working every day to keep our schools open as COVID continues to impact our daily operations. There's no need for action by the board with this report. This is really information that I think after I was reviewing it with SBSU Director of Human Resources, Nick Galt, I felt that it was important for the board to receive this data to better understand the struggles our teachers and support staff and administrators are facing on just about every day of this year. We have been fortunate that we have not had major school closings. We have had some isolated closings, I feel not widespread at this time, but there are many mornings or late evenings that I am in communication with school principals, making a determination if they will have enough staff to safely open their school the next day. So with that, Nick, you here? There he is. All right. So Nick, I believe I already made you host. If you're going to share your screen that we have. And Nick, I don't know if you have anything you want to add before you start on your comments to my.
No, I think
we're showing this tonight.
Yeah, I think once I kind of go through the information here, I'll add a little narrative, but I'll start by just explaining kind of what everybody's looking at. So you're looking at sort of a compilation of two different sets of data. The first is staffing. The second is absences. So to focus quickly on 2021, 2022, the current year, we have, including Arlington, and what I mean by that is the Arlington School District, employees and those BVSU, formerly BVSU, now SVSU employees. And I distinguish between the two because when it comes to absences, we don't have data for that set of employees. So you'll see that in a moment. But over 800 employees. Currently, we have approximately 58 vacancies. Now that fluctuates. We receive resignations, a handful, I'll say, 1 or 2 a week probably, but we're also filling positions. So that number changes, but it's been pretty consistently around that number since the beginning of the year, which is significantly higher than I feel it's been at any time since I've been here in my 6 years. I can't point back to any specific data point, the number of vacancies we had at any given time. But to me, in my role in HR, that feels like a large number to have at any point during the school year. And we're in January right now. So, right in the middle of the school year. A comparison of student, total number of students. So we have approximately 3,000 students. That does not include our early education students that are at partner programs. That only includes the in-house early ed students. So in terms of absences, what we looked at was a set of absences from our frontline system for this school year up until this last Friday the 21st. So this is for all of our school employees. So those employees who are housed full-time in a school. So it didn't include, for example, myself. It did not include a school psychologist who moves between buildings. It was school-based teachers, support staff. 6,300 absences so far this year, and 5,600 when we look specifically at those schools in the Bennington areas. And again, the reason I did that is because we have a comparison point that we can use from prior years. Of those, we'll talk about the 5,600 number because I can compare it. 2,600, it says fill needed. And what that means is we needed a substitute for that role. So an example of a role that would need a substitute on a regular basis, an elementary school teacher. Every time a first, second, third, fourth grade teacher calls out, we put the call out on Frontline for a substitute for that position. We do not put the call out for a special education teacher or, to use the example I mentioned earlier, a school psychologist or a social worker. There are a school nurse, a guidance counselor. There are a lot of positions that we do not solicit substitutes for. So of those 5,600, about 2,600 required substitutes so far. And 600, just over, were filled. So that gives us a fill rate of 23%. And you can see when we include Arlington, a total overall fill rate of 28%. So I'm going to bring your attention over to the 2019-2020 data. Didn't focus on position numbers or vacancies. Really wanted to focus on the absences. So when we look at 2019-2020, the same period, essentially the start of school, August 20th through the end of the first semester, that halfway point of the year, we had 4,500 absences. And I can tell you we had roughly the same number of staff. I would say with the number of vacancies, we might even be looking at a slightly smaller number. But 4,500 absences, 2,300 which required subs, over 1,000 of which we were able to fill, and a fill rate of 47%. So I'm gonna draw your attention to two numbers. The total absences, you see a difference of 1,100 absences from 2019 to 2021, and a fill rate that went from 47% down to 23%. For anyone who's curious, where's 2020, 2021? The data for that year is really not a good benchmark for us. Some of our schools started remote, specifically the high school was remote until November 17th. We had far fewer absences than you would expect. So using 2019, 2020, that period of time was pre-COVID. So it was a really good benchmark for us to compare against. I've included one kind of important piece of data that when I looked through the numbers was significant. I'll call these, positive or, beneficial absences. These are for absences that support professional learning. So typically teachers, but other support staff positions that are going on professional development, a release day, which is where they come and do some training within the district, or field trips. For obvious reasons, field trips and outside professional development numbers are down significantly this year. We have about 119 of those compared to almost 600 in 2019. And the significance of that for the data that I was looking at is that when you factor those numbers in to total absences, in 2019, that leaves about 4,000 absences that were sick or personal time. In 2021, it's 5,500. So when we look down in this bottom right, this difference from 2019 to 2021, these are the three big numbers that I want people to kind of take away from this. Our absences are up 40%, 39%. Our substitute fill rate is down 24%. And what that results in is an increase in unfilled absences of 67%. So 2/3 more absences are going unfilled. And this is where I started, I said I'd add a bit of narrative. This has, I'm sure, a cumulative effect, a snowball effect, if you will. You can imagine a higher number of absences, less being filled by substitutes. That creates strain on our existing staff. They're having to cover, they're having to step into positions they're unfamiliar with. They're having to do that on a daily basis. A good example is paraprofessionals being pulled into cover for a classroom teacher, or maybe even a specialist teacher being covered in to cover for, say, a third grade teacher, for example. And that's happening on a regular basis in a lot of our schools. And that's exhausting. That takes a toll. And I think it has a cumulative effect then. That exhausted staff member who's been covering and running around helping out then is more likely to take an absence themselves. And that leads to, I could go on and on. But I think there are a lot of effects that this has on our staff. And when Jim and I looked at this data and we felt it was important that you saw this, I think it helps put in perspective the experience that our staff are having this year and have had over the last, 22 months. And, from my vantage point, from having spoken to a lot of staff, whether it be through just regular conversations, reaching out to me to talk about things, or exit interviews, that's a theme that I see time and again, is that staff are, they're tired. They've been working really, really hard. These absences are not a reflection of people calling in because they don't want to be there. They don't want to do the work. These are committed employees that have been here for the last 2 years. And I think the increased number of absences is just a reflection of how difficult it's been for them.
And Nick, it also is a reflection of the amount of quarantining that is impacting too.
Absolutely.
Which wasn't in the 1920, yeah.
Yep. We've had staff who have had to quarantine for themselves, for their children. And we've seen that as a huge theme this year, which is impacting, have a huge impact. Any questions about any of this data? I know it's a lot of numbers.
as I said, there is no board action required from this, but I felt that it was important that you see it, the toll that this is taking on our staff, our teachers, support staff, principals, the human resource department, who is constantly trying to come up with new ways to find substitutes. But you can see with those fill rates, there's no way we could ever get enough subs to do it. So it is putting, there's nothing to do other than to keep you informed and let you know. And I'm hopeful that we are on a downward trend with this latest variant, and we'll start to see less impact on this. But there's so many other factors, like Nick mentioned, paras getting pulled, and then as superintendent, great, that covers a class, but what was that para? What did we hire that para educator to do that day? Then that is not getting done. And the impact goes beyond that. Our vendors, such as the Abbey Group, and I mentioned earlier, Dufour, they struggle with the same issues. We had last week, 2 weeks ago, Pownell was not able to have hot lunch provided because of the impact of COVID on the Abbey Group staff. So it was bag lunches shipped to Pownell for that day, that week, from another kitchen. And this week, it's the impact of COVID on food service staff is hit Molly Starr, and meals are being shipped up from the middle school. And so it sounds like a small inconvenience, but it really impacts our, we mentioned, Nicole mentioned students who are struggling. Here's the published lunch. You would think it's not that big of a deal, but here's the published lunch schedule, and it's supposed to be pizza today, and now you got a bag of lunch. And with all the stress that everybody else is operating under, it's just, one more hit for everyone to take. There's not a lot that we can do other than to keep plugging along, offering support as we can. Our goal is to keep our students in school, keep the schools open. But if each time that I'm faced with this, I meet with the principal, usually phone call, texting at night, here's what we see. And Nick mentioned our frontline system, that's our attendance system, so we can see at night what it looks like for the next morning. And we got our fingers crossed with how many may go into the system that morning, because they've been impacted too. And so far, obviously we've had to close some schools for a day, two here and there, but not, as I talked to some of my superintendent colleagues, a lot more widespread, like wholesale closings. We haven't had to do that yet. And I'm hoping that we won't. Hope that we can keep the schools open. Thank you, Nick.
Do you have any, is there any working groups that are trying to, I know there's not a lot you can do, but address some of these concerns? Like, for example, I know you're aware of it. Our 5-year strategic plan committee, we just kind of morphed into a quote unquote recovery committee temporarily. And we just had our first meeting this past week, and coming up with ways that we can try to give our staff some boost, some reprieve, some morale, generators to kind of push through to the end of the year. We're at a time where we're getting a February break that's going to give them a break. You got an April break, but there's a long stretch in that March time when there just is no break.
So we do have wellness activities planned.
Right.
We have a wellness coach. We have a committee, a standing committee. Nick's on it, Laura's on it. Do you want to talk what the wellness committee is working on? Either one of you?
There's a health and wellness committee, and then through ESSER district wide, it's available to everyone. We have a health and wellness coach. That was part of the massive community feedback we received. Was we want to see an increase in movement and wellness. And so again, Jan Wyatt she's new, never knew we needed her, but she's available to the district to help plan wellness and movement activities for staff and to support teachers and what that could look like. But so far we've had painting activities with kids that can go home, and she's trying to engage them in hikes and trying to find wellness activities. A lot of her weight's been on staff right now for the very reason that you're all saying. And Nick and I act as her support with the health and wellness team.
There is a rumor that there is going to be a birdhouse making class in March.
Yes.
And maybe it's being led by the superintendent, but so but with the total number of employees, are we reaching everyone? We're trying. Thank you, Nick. And Laura. Earlier today, and again, thank you, Nicole, for bringing it up. I sent you the revised transition plan, working plan. The administration met on January 11th. That's where we updated this. We will meet again in early March to make it more relevant date-wise. There are a few things that did get pushed back. The 2-hour minimum visits to Arlington will now start in February. We decided with the latest COVID surge will not unnecessarily put people in buildings that don't have to be there. So that will start in March, February. And the special ed transition, which said it was going to start January 3rd, is not complete yet. I think that is still in progress. Kate, I not to put you on a spot, but do you have a date for what you're thinking? I know I read your most recent email on your thoughts on that. If you could speak to that for a second.
Sure. I mean, I think we've been we're teaming nicely with the great staff that I've been meeting at Arlington, Dara Zink and Rachel Boisvert. And we have a committee next week to actually,
Well, you didn't know I was going to call on you.
to hire an associate director that will help us meet the needs for the Arlington community. And so Sarah Pickering and Deanne Lacoste will be helping us do that work next week.
Hi, Finn. Finn's a regular at some of our Zoom meetings. So it is still a work in progress. None of these dates were ever etched in stone, but I feel that there are good relationships developing as we go forward with this transition. Your principals are now attending our principal meetings, our directors meetings, and that will continue. And we did the first, Amy Goslin did the first agenda for your meeting in January. There was a couple of bugs, but we'll work it out as everybody learns the process and we all get comfortable with each other through this transition. Any questions I can answer for any question you may have on that?
That transition paperwork is on the website?
No, I emailed it to you. Yeah.
Jim, I had a couple of, this is Nicole.
Hi, Nicole. You took Leon's advice. Very good.
What was that? Oh, saying who I am.
Introducing yourself, yes.
Yes. I'm a very visual person. And when I watched Laura go through the ESSER presentation, the chart and the tracking there on some of the programs and the timeline and the resources and the benchmarks, I don't know what it would take to transition this document into something like that that's just a little bit easier to use as a working document.
We can do that. There's some of the things that I would take out of this because I really feel that this is more our internal notes than a tracking document, but we can take that as the next step, Nicole, to do that. And then as Dick said, is this online? If we did that version, we could put that on our website too, so that everyone can see that.
And a few meetings ago, Dick made a comment, and I guess I just want to circle back to that, which is this is going to take some time to make this all work. And it's not going to be perfect out of the gate, although I think everybody has said this was an arranged marriage. We didn't have the prenup kind of figured out before we got here.
Yeah.
But I appreciate all the efforts that are being made to make the transition possible. One thing, just advocating for our schools, is change for the sake of change. I would ask that it really be thoughtfully considered, that there are some things that are really unique about our schools and our district. And while we're trying to integrate into a much larger system, to change, to align just for the sake of alignment, when what we actually have in place is not either out of compliance or inappropriate, or, if what we have in place is good, I would just hope that there are those conversations taking place about encouraging, enabling, and allowing Arlington to continue to be who we are as a district. There are lots of ways that we will benefit from the larger SU structure and the additional resources and the expertise, and for that we are very grateful. I just don't want us to lose what we have in that process.
I've tried to be very mindful of that and,
Yep.
And respectful of.
And I'm not
Of
saying
our-
that I'm not saying it out loud because I think it's happening. I guess I'm just saying it out loud because if we continue to kind of work under that philosophy, I think this will go really well.
Yeah. I think I commend all of us that we are talking about this at all. We have to put it out there. We have to have these discussions. Nobody wants to force. We all had this force on us. We don't want to force anything on anything else. And as an example of what we're not all doing together, I am not calling, if there's a snow day for Arlington and Sangary, now I'm not calling that. We reached an agreement with the principals there that, and that doesn't happen. The principal in Pownell doesn't call his snow day, but I'm respecting what the principals asked there. And I'm not saying that going forward, that's always going to be the case, but all I asked is they communicate with me on what happens on a weather impacted morning, and respecting the wide geographics here, that what's happening in Arlington weather-wise may not fit here. And it really works because of the separate transportation issue, but that I offer that as an example of, I am committed to, I'm not of respecting the individuality of all the schools. So.
And then on the document, when it's developed, a lot of what's identified here is who the primary point of contact is within the SVSU. If in that document, there could also be the Arlington, I guess, sort of stakeholder, because it's not always the principals.
Right.
And making sure that so that we have, again, that visual of who is going to be working together on these different aspects as we go forward, like communication. We have somebody who's been really running and managing our district communication, our website, our newsletters. And so just to make sure that person is brought into the loop when any decisions are being made or any conversations are coming up, to ensure that the right person is in the room when those discussions.
Well, I know that they were involved with our director of communication was up in Arlington for website discussions, and we went there, and they are part of that discussion. So I go back saying that I am not trying to exclude anyone. I want to include everyone, and and try to work with what works for everyone. And I can't make the promise that everything will stay the same as it is, because obviously some things will change. But I'll say it again, I'm trying to be respectful to Arlington of what they have, what they've done, and what they would like to keep.
The only thing that I would add, and I've thrown this at you a few times, and I think it's getting better as we move on, is that I guess at this point, almost excessive communication, I think is a better way to put it. That communication of what change is coming next before it happens might relieve some of the anxiety or the angst of what we understand and recognize there absolutely is changes happening. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. That's the way it has to happen. But maybe some preemptive communication about that occurring would just kind of relieve that any stress or anxiety of those changes ahead of time. Might just help a little bit.
One quick question. May I assume that the just communication issues in terms of notifications to Arlington board members have been resolved? That was an issue a couple months ago.
About their emails.
Yes.
Email
Yep,
them out.
yep. I think the email groups are working good. We're absolutely, yep.
Good.
Yep, from when we discovered that they weren't on, their
Right.
email addresses wasn't on the SVSU list
Sort
for
of an
200
easy
hit.
fix, but-
Yeah. It wasn't as easy as a fix as you might think, but it's fixed, yeah.
The only thing I have noticed, and it's nobody's fault, is there sometimes is a lag. Like, for example, you had sent a reply to one of my emails. I didn't get it for like 3 days later.
Mhm.
But I knew based on your reply that you sent it prior
It
to
was
our
hung up
meeting.
somewhere.
Yeah, because you said, I'll see you tomorrow night at the meeting.
Yep.
And then I didn't get it until the day after the meeting. I was like, well, we saw each other. And I was like, okay, it must have been.
All right. We're working on it.
Yeah, I don't think it's anybody's fault. I think it just gets lost sometimes. And
I wonder why you didn't respond to me.
Cyberspace.
No,
It's the server's fault.
Yeah, well, it still shouldn't happen. So I'm gonna go back to COVID to complete my report. As I cough. I still am startled at how long this has gone on and how long this has impacted our school. And I see it in the faces of our teachers and paraprofessionals, our principals, the administrators I work with, and I have little to offer them, but my thanks for all that they're doing every day to keep our students in school and our schools open. And I want to express my thanks to families and parents who have been with us as we shift, and they may not always like the information and like the disruption in food service, not anticipated, but there was a contingency plan, didn't work for everyone, but just another example of just when we think we're climbing out of this, it continues to ravage the school system. And why I wanted you to see those numbers, because there are days that I wonder how some of our schools are operating. I would not want to be a school principal today. I'm happy being the superintendent. Well, let's not say happy, but and teachers who just don't know if they're going to get asked, we need you to cover during your prep period today. Yes, we'll compensate you, but I know you need your prep period too. And if you keep doing that every day, what is that long-term toll on everyone? But it goes back to some of the wellness things that we're trying to do, and we hope to do more. Because we also want our staff to stay, because you saw how many vacancies there are. So not much more to say on that other than I just a really heartfelt thanks for everyone hanging in there as we are now approaching the start of a third year of this, which I don't think when we went, I believe it was St. Patrick's Day of 2020 when we shut down. I truly believed it was going to be for a couple of weeks. And then shortly into that, I thought the rest of the school year would be impacted. And I really thought that then summertime would allow a reset. I never thought that the fall football season and fall sports was going to be impacted. And I think that it may again in 2022. It's just unbelievable. So I have high hopes that we're on the numbers are on the way down. It does seem that it is in Vermont, but there's always the possibility of another variant. But and thank you to board members for adapting to remote meetings and everything else that's changed in this new world. So it's my report tonight. Chair.
Is Nick's information posted on the website or available?
No. But it's a public meeting, so
Yeah, no,
yeah.
but
All right,
it was hard to read
Remember
that from.
we can send it to the boards. I'm not interested, I don't want anyone to think that we put this information out there because I'm blaming any employment group
No.
for taking too much time off or anything like, that's not the intent of it, so. But we can share that with you if you weren't, I understand you were able to. Nick? I have it electronically, so I can send it out
He's
to
got kids at home too.
you.
Sometimes.
Jim, did you ask for me?
I said, the board would like a copy of your report electronically, and I told them I have it, and I can do that.
Yep, we can make it in a PDF and send it out, no problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So he was listening, but he could have been bouncing a baby in 1 hour.
Yeah, definitely.
Baby bumps. You know, so-
Yes.
Jim, to your point, being made, the thing, I guess I'm trying to be mindful of as a board member is to consider some of the input that we're getting from the community through the lens of families are scared and stressed and overwhelmed, and every time their child has to quarantine and stay out of school, and a lot of times that fear and that stress comes out as anger, and it may not be appropriately directed, but it still is, it's an expression of their feeling like they are also at their wits' end. It's hard to be the board member on the receiving end of that. It's hard to be the administrator on the receiving end of that. Unfortunately, a lot of it becomes accusatory and angry and ugly. But also I myself am just trying to filter some of those comments through that lens of families are really struggling. And while our responsibility is to take care of our staff and our schools and our students, we've got parents who are just beyond their capacity. So I'm singing to the choir because we've got board members here who are all very well aware of that, but it is something that I'm just trying to go back to often enough that I don't have a gut reaction to some of the anger when it gets expressed, because that's hard.
We've all received those emails, but I try to put it in perspective that you saw the numbers is over 3,000 students. So how many families is that? And the percentages of emails that are really angry that I get are, I think, small. I think most have been really supportive and understanding. And I'm going to focus on that.
I think the board probably has the easier job here. If you look around at all the administrators and the teachers, there's no question in my mind that the board has the easier position to deal with. But thank you for your comments. As a chair, there's a couple of groups that we still need to address: the superintendent's evaluation and the sub-discussion was on the list. I realize there's a lot of things going on, but it's probably best to schedule those as a Zoom situation, and that kind of puts the load back on you folks to figure out how we do that.
I know we had struggled to find some open dates, and then it kind of fell apart from there. Yep.
And it may not happen until we get through February, March. I don't know. I just don't want to lose track of it. We have policies that tell us what we got to do, and the sub-discussion certainly is appropriate. And I have the list of those folks that are on those committees if anyone's interested. The other thing that I was wondering is, when's an appropriate time to evaluate the tech change from the technology director to our new company? This is a little bit early.
Yeah, we started October 1, so
given how hard it is to plan things.
well, we would have to renew their contract July 1, so probably well enough in advance for that. So let me think about that. And you're going to reorganize in March, so probably maybe not your March meeting, but maybe on the April agenda we could give you a report on how I think that's going.
These are just things that kind of need to be out there. It's easy to lose track of stuff in Arlington's interest, I'm sure. has to be considered in this kind of thing. I have nothing else to report. Are there other issues to be brought before the board, realizing we can't take action on them tonight, but items that we might want to consider in the future? Anything else we want to discuss tonight?
We may have, well, not so much this board because you're the SU, but Renee, still, we're on the ESSER 3 spending. We're almost ready to bring that to boards with the representative from Centerline Architecture met with Renee and I this morning. They had three more building maintenance workers that they needed to meet with to finalize the list. And then we can bring it to the boards. Those will probably be Zoom meetings, but we'll have a list available hopefully in the next 2 weeks. Renee, still there?
Yes, yeah.
Yep.
He's open to have information to me by the end of the week. So yeah, we're moving forward and we'll be ready to start sharing it. Yep.
Okay. So that's coming down.
Yeah.
Anything else? For your information, the budget status reports included, the student enrollment for January is included in your packet. And don't forget to check out DocuSign so Renee can move on that.
Great reminder.
And we would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Grant, second by Ray. I'm sure there's no discussion on that. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? We are adjourned.
Cat TV is celebrating 30 years of community media. Help support Cat TV's next 30 years by becoming a member today. Your membership will help us continue covering meaningful, local content. Thank you for supporting your local community media station.